What's good, everybody? I'm Keandre, this is HoopIntellect, and welcome back to the channel. Now, as you can see by the title of the video, we've got a too early mock in this one. It is still a little too early to do this and get too much substantial out of it, given not much has really happened outside of, the NBL Blitz and a couple Ignite games and maybe some rumors here and there, but that's about it. So as usual, a lot of this is going to change over the next several months. Just keep that in mind. In terms of the order in this mock, I kind of just went with what I loosely think is going to be the standings in the NBA next year, but it doesn't really matter too much at this point. One, because it's a lottery and obviously a lot of things can happen there, but also because the Dame trade just happened as I was, putting all this together, and that kind of changes how I feel about Portland next season, getting Ayton and whatever they get from the Drew trade as well. I think they could be pretty competitive, and we talk a little bit more about that later. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into that #1 overall selection held by the Washington Wizards, who should have a pretty good shot at the next few of them if the lottery balls are in their favor. And with their first pick, the Wizards take Ron Holland, wing from the G League Ignite. He's been in the mix for #1 for me going into the preseason, and though I was a little more skeptical of his offense, his flashes of improvement as a creator and perimeter player have stood out to me. And when you combine that with the athleticism, defense, and motor as one of the youngest players in the class, he's got to be well in that group. I definitely still consider some others at this point, so it's far from set in stone, but Holland is the guy at #1 for me at the moment, and I think DC is mostly in a best player available situation for the foreseeable future, so he's the guy.
Showing us a lot of good stuff here, Holland. Really.
Now, #2, the Portland Trail Blazers take 7-1 big man out of France, Alex Sarr. Sarr has recently boosted his stock into this group of contenders for one of the top picks. We'll see if it holds up throughout the year, but a 7-footer who is a very good athlete, can protect the rim, finish plays, and potentially do a little more offensively on a perimeter is going to belong high in this class, and he'll have a lot of eyes on him throughout the NBL season. Now, again, I made this prior to the Dame trade. I think them getting DeAndre Ayton also makes this a more difficult decision, and honestly, depending on what they get back from the Drew trade, the Blazers could realistically knock on the door of the play-in if they wanted to, but for the sake of time and putting all this together, we'll just roll with taking Sarr #2 for now. At #3, the San Antonio Spurs take Isaiah Collier, a point guard out of USC. The Spurs have a great base to future success, getting Victor Wembanyama in this year's draft, and also having guys like Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, and Keldon Johnson on the roster. But Collier gives them a dynamic at the guard spot that they don't currently have. He's a big-time playmaker and a serious downhill threat, and could be one of the premier prospects in this class. I like him here in San Antonio, and think whatever pick they get next year, they should be targeting one of these creators. And right now, Collier would be at the top of the list for me. At #4, the Detroit Pistons take another member of the G League Ignite in Modest Buzelis. Modest is a 6'8" to 6'10" wing with intriguing playmaking and shooting abilities, and really someone I think has the potential to complement in a lot of different situations. And I think that's the case here in Detroit, despite it maybe being a little crowded on paper at the moment. He'll need to really produce over the course of the season and ease concerns about him as a creator in his frame and continue getting better defensively at the pro level, but I still view him as one of the best talents available, and that's who the Pistons take. Now, with the 5th pick, the Hornets select Justin Edwards, a 6'7" wing out of Kentucky. Edwards is a smooth lefty with good size and a knack for getting to the pull-up and taking on ball handling responsibilities. It'll be interesting to see how Edwards looks this year. He's a bit of a divisive prospect depending on who you ask. I'm one that does think that he could compete for a top 3 spot, but I also see reasonable concern with what he does best in the shooting and separation, especially given that he's sophomore aged as a freshman. But in September, I'm cool with betting on him here from what I've seen so far, and adding another wing talent to this Hornets group. This pick is top 4 protected by the Houston Rockets, but because it's at #6, it goes to OKC, and they take G League Ignite forward/big Ethan Almansa. And Almansa's skill set as a 4-5 man who is versatile defensively, has great touch around the rim, and can serve as a playmaker in multiple ways, could be highly valuable to a lot of teams, and especially the Thunder. And I think he's a lot of what they've wanted out of Jeremiah Robinson Earl and Jay Will. Now, he'll have a lot of questions still to answer in terms of his offensive fit and impact and the shooting and how much he can play as an undersized 5 defensively, but he's someone that just makes winning plays, and best case scenario for him as a player is pretty easily one of the most impactful in his class to me. Now at number 7, the Houston Rockets via Brooklyn take Donovan Clingan, a 7'2" big man out of UConn. Now while they have Alperen Sengun, someone who I am a fan of, there are still a lot of questions of what a winning team looks like if he's your focal point at your 5. And I think Clingan's rim protection and upside as a play finisher make him a potential target for a Rockets team that could use some more identity back there. And I like Clingan enough here to exhaust possibilities even with current personnel, though that could change over the next several months. With the 8th pick, the Chicago Bulls take Stephon Castle, a 6'6" guard out of UConn. Castle is a big, crafty guard who can make plays for others, score in multiple ways, and defend a couple positions at his best. Now, some creation and separation and also shooting concerns could hamper what I think is a top 5 ceiling, but I like what he brings entering the season, and with the Bulls likely moving in a different direction after this year if they were to land at this spot in the lottery, this could be a solid future piece. With the 9th pick, the Jazz take Duke guard Tyrese Proctor. Now, Utah is in a very interesting position because I do think they're good enough to be competitive, but also not a true playoff team in the West, and it puts them in the back half of the lottery. But their pick also goes to OKC if they fall outside the top 10, so I'm sure that'll be on their mind too. They've currently got a ton of guards on the roster right now. We'll see how they all emerge, Keontae, Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, and everybody else. But I think Proctor could prove himself to be capable as a high-level pick-and-roll creator and someone I've grown fairly high on defensively as well. With the 10th pick, the Spurs take Providence's guard Wade Dual. Dual is one of the most interesting players in this class as a long, fluid guard who wreaks havoc defensively and has some of the most creation upside in the entire class, in my opinion. I think there's still some level of wait and see with Dual in terms of just seeing him produce consistently at the college level, but from what he's shown, I feel good about projecting him as a lotto talent, and for this early a mock, even taking Collier at 3 doesn't make me go in a different direction. At 11, the Orlando Magic take Baylor guard / wing Jacoby Walter. He's a physical 2 guard with high upside as a shooter and defender and some as a sort of power self-creator. And I think he's the type of player that could complement in a lot of situations, even this Magic one, despite the seeming millions of players and guards on their roster. With the 12th pick, the T-Wolves take DJ Wagner, a dynamic scoring guard out of Kentucky. There is a decent range of opinions on DJ coming into the year, many of which I get, but I think his scoring talent from the perimeter and as a driver, along with his defensive acumen, will carry him a ways. Now, he'll need to show progress as a shooter and decision maker, but I think he could be an important piece here. At 13, the Pelicans take Florida sophomore Riley Kugel. I love what I saw down the stretch of last season, and he's an obvious breakout candidate this year as an athletic guard who can really score and defend. Now, he'll also need to continue progressing as a passer, but there's a lot there, and though New Orleans already has a ton of useful pieces on this roster, I think Kugel will land likely somewhere in his range. And with the 14th and the last pick of the lotto, the Thunder take Indiana's Kel'el Ware. Ware certainly has the potential to be a lottery pick as he did coming into last year. We'll just need to see that progression in the physicality and motor first and foremost, and then honestly just what he looks like with a much bigger role. But a 7-footer who can shoot the 3, block shots, and contain on the perimeter is always going to be a commodity, and I like the idea of him in the front court mix in Oklahoma City. But in reality, a team that has a lot of great young pieces is going to be competing for a playoff spot this year and could have 3 lottery picks in this draft alone. On top of all the other future draft capital that they have, will probably need to make some type of winning splash move rather than prioritizing picking whoever is available in this draft. Now at 15, the Pacers take UCLA big man Adai Mara. Now Mara's talent is too much to pass up at this point as a cerebral playmaking big who can finish plays and defend well on the interior. The questions about his overall mobility, especially defensively, and how versatile he can be on the offensive end will dictate a lot of where he's selected next year, but he lands here at number 15. Now if I'm Indiana, Mara probably isn't someone I'm really thinking about, but again, it's still September and too early to overanalyze someone I think could be best case a top 5 talent in this class. Atlanta has back-to-back picks here, and they take French wing Melvin Agensa with the first. I'm a pretty big believer in Agensa as a first-round talent, and he's looked good in his first action with St. Quentin out in the BetClick Elite League. An athletic lefty wing with shot-making upside and the ability to make an impact defensively in multiple ways makes sense in a lot of spots, but especially one like Atlanta. And then at 17, the Hawks go with who I view as the best player available here in Kansas guard Elmarko Jackson. Jackson will be somewhat of an X factor for a Kansas team that'll likely be the national championship favorite entering the season, and his all-around game as a combo guard who does a lot of things well will land him in my top 20 entering the year. At 18, the Grizzlies take Indiana forward Mackenzie Mbako, and he intrigues me as a big wing who has shown a ton as a shooter and shot maker from the perimeter, and has at least shown flashes, especially in help defensively. I think there will be questions he'll need to answer in terms of his mobility, and we'll see how he looks defensively next to both Kel'el Ware and Malik Reneau. But I'm currently a fan of his upside, and I think if he proves he can hold out there, Memphis will be a good landing spot for him. With the 19th pick, the Heat pick Elliot Cadeau. Now, despite his smaller stature, Cadeau is one of the most talented creators in this class, and you can make an argument for him being the top dog. He's a 6'1" point guard headed to North Carolina with a deep bag of moves, a knack for making plays for others, and an edge and fire to him that I think really fits this Miami squad. We'll see if this pick even belongs to them by next June, but I really like Cadeau as a long-term contributor for what's always a tough contender in Miami. The Knicks take Kyle Filipowski at 20. Flip surprised a lot of people returning to college for his sophomore year, but this should be a big year for he and Duke, getting him further into major first-round consideration. Now, while there are some concerns about certain parts of his game and where he fits, I think a big forward who will likely shoot it much better, can put it on the floor, make a play, and at least compete defensively will intrigue a lot of teams. And with the Mavs pick, the Knicks take Judah Mintz out of Syracuse. Mintz is really just a three-point shot away from being a first-round pick to me. He's creative with the ball, he puts pressure on the rim, he can make plays. He showed you about as much as you can defensively within the 2-3. He performed well at the combine. He's got the tools, it's just about taking it a step further and putting it all together. And here he gets to stay in New York. The Indiana Pacers take Cody Williams, a 6'8" wing out of Colorado. We talked about this in the too early board, but I could equally see him emerging as a lotto pick, as I could see him returning for year 2 of college. He's a lanky wing with intriguing upside as a slasher, defender, and some as a playmaker. And if he makes progress as a shooter, he'll be in great shape. And Indiana could be one of those spots that could be patient with him and get a potential gem out of him in the next several years. The Sixers take Terrence Arsenault, a 6'6" wing out of Houston. His 3-and-D skill set is bound to get him NBA attention if he can make that leap offensively with more responsibility this year. Philly is going to be able to do pretty much whatever they want if they have these picks in next year's draft, and I think Arsenault makes a lot of sense. The Cavaliers go with Omaha Ballou, a forward from Iowa State, at 27. I'm still not 100% sure Ballou will emerge as that first round one and done right away, but the talent is definitely there. He's an athletic forward slash big wing who has a lot of upside defensively, has shown he can bring energy on the glass, and has potential as a perimeter player offensively as well. And I like the size and versatility he could bring to this Cleveland team. Boston Celtics are up at 25, and they take Nikola Topic. He's a 6'5" guard out of Serbia who has had an impressive run this year and continued that in the last couple weeks, looking like a first-round prospect for Mega Meese as a crafty scorer and playmaker. Late first may be underselling him a bit right now, but he could definitely be a future contributor at the guard spot for a team like Boston. With 26, the Pelicans take Bobby Klintman. Klintman is a 6'8" wing now running with Cairns of the NBL, and his upside as a shooter and live dribble playmaker at that size, matched with some of the defensive flashes, though he's got a lot of progress yet to make there, should keep him in first round contention for a lot of teams throughout the year. I think he could be a good piece for New Orleans. The Phoenix Suns take 6'9" French wing Tijan Saloon at 27. The Saloon is somewhat of a wild card in this class to me, at least right now. He brings an intriguing level of tools with his athleticism, ability to attack the closeout, and create events defensively. And if he can prove it as a shooter and maybe more importantly as a decision maker, I think he could fly up boards quickly. He's recently coming off a 24-point performance in the BCL qualifiers for Cholet, and I think that could be the start towards him trending to the first round. The Celtics are back up here and they take Zachary Riezeshay at 28. I'm currently in the camp of Riezeshay being far more of a project than some of the top 5 and 10 buzz he still has in some places, but late first in a spot that could be patient with him. You gotta like the upside for a big wing who has shown a ton of good things as a defender and some offensively, and hope he can mold it all together. Trey Alexander goes to Milwaukee at 29. He's a 6'4" combo guard out of Creighton who can create for himself off the bounce, shoot the 3, and really defend, and he showed it all in what was a big sophomore year for him. I think this year having more point guard responsibilities with Ryan Nembhard leaving could be really beneficial for him to further develop as a playmaker, and the Bucks add someone I think could be a steal of a rotation guy after losing a few of them in the pursuit of Damian Lillard. And the Denver Nuggets finish off the first round taking USC's Kobe Johnson. Kobe was one of the best defenders in the Pac-12 last season, but in USC's foreign tour several weeks ago, he looked primed to take it a step further. As long as he continues progressing offensively, he'll have a great chance of landing in that late first as a high-level defender and connector piece that I think contending teams will have a lot of interest in. And I'd guess he's probably already in Denver's long list of potential targets in the future. I think it's probably a little early to go as in-depth as we usually do on all the second round picks, especially considering I don't feel super strongly about the gaps in talent from like the mid-20s on my rough board, but we'll at least touch on everything here, starting with the 31st pick where Detroit takes Ignite 4-man Tyler Smith to start off round 2. Smith has been a standout so far after spending the last couple years with Overtime Elite, and his skill set as a floor spacer and scorer with upside as a versatile defender as he puts those pieces together could be perfect for a team like the Pistons. The Bucks go with Terry Darlin from the Ignite as well. He's currently out with an ankle injury until at least the start of the G League season, but a 6'6" wing / guard with the upside to really score it and create off the bounce and also make some plays defensively could shine in this mix long term. San Antonio takes Adem Bona, center out of UCLA. You guys are probably familiar with him at this point. His athleticism and energy matched with the defensive upside give him a clear path to contribute. Hopefully he's healthy as possible this year. That does worry me a little bit going into the season, but I think it'd be an interesting look to pair him next to Wemby for minutes in that front court. The Knicks are back up and they take 6'11" wing / forward in Baba Miller. It's very easy to buy into the idea of Baba as a giant wing who has some wild flashes on both ends, but he'll need to show real progression for Florida State this year. And if he does, he could very easily be a top 20 prospect, but the Knicks snag him here in the early second. Virginia's Ryan Dunn goes to Portland at 35. At 6'8", Dunn is a big-time defensive prospect, especially in help. He's athletic, has good size, and if he can make progress as a shooter and overall offensive player in what should be a bigger role this year for him, he'll probably get serious first-round buzz as a prototypical complimentary wing, and Portland doesn't flinch at the opportunity at getting one of those. The Thunder go with Ohio State wing Scotty Middleton at 36. I think Middleton could very easily be a 2-year guy like some others we'll talk about throughout this second round, but he's got a clear path as a 3-and-D wing who has taken big steps forward offensively over the last couple years at Sunrise. Cameron Carr is the pick for the Rockets at 37. Coming out of Tennessee, he'll probably maximize his stock as a 2-year guy as well, but it's hard not to really like his long-term upside as a sort of 3-and-D wing, not to box him in completely, but also with tremendous length who's really started to blossom and grow into his frame these last couple years. Aaron Bradshaw is the pick for the Pelicans at 38. Talent-wise, Bradshaw could very easily be a first-rounder. I do have some concerns in his motor and mobility in spots defensively, but even more than that in his health as he's still been in a boot recovering from foot surgery. But if things can check out there and he makes progress and at least contributes for Kentucky this year, a big that in theory can protect the rim and potentially stretch the floor is always going to be a highly coveted asset. The Knicks take Louisville big man Dennis Evans here, and Evans could flat out be the best rim protector in the class, and though I think he's still raw enough that an extra year in college could do him well, he could just be that good defensively to go, possibly in the first round. The Knicks don't have much need for most of who they could pick here, so they just take the talent. Jan Vide goes to the Clippers at 40. I like Vide as a creator, and I think he could emerge as a one and done, though it is pretty crowded in that UCLA backcourt right now. I'm kind of taking the wait and see approach with him in terms of that creation excelling at the next level, but for right now, I like him here to the Clippers. Orlando takes Berke Bayuktanjel at 41. Berke is a 6'9 wing at a UCLA, and he has big time potential as a floor spacer and playmaker. There's already been some buzz on his performances coming out of their practices, and like many other teams, I think the Magic could use someone of his archetype. Denver picks OU guard Milos Uzan at 42. He stood out a lot as a freshman at Oklahoma, and I think he'll have a great opportunity to take that a step further this year. He's got a really well-rounded game. He's creative, crafty, has good feel. Just another really solid fit in a place like Denver to me. Babacar Sane goes to Boston at 43. Sane is in his second year with the Ignite, and though he's still a bit of a roller coaster on a play-to-play basis, there is a lot of promise there as a skilled forward with the ability to make an impact in a few ways, and someone of his archetype could also help add to this Celtics team long term. Houston picks Nikola Jurisic at 44. I still think a 6'8 wing who has the ability to make a play for himself and others should still be well in the draft mix. Now the clock is ticking on him to be more consistent and knock down more shots, but I think he's a draftable guy. Now the Clippers are back up and they pick Oso Ighodaro at 45. Now this is mid-second for Oso, but he's also someone I'd keep an eye on to make a big jump throughout the year. I like his combination of defensive versatility and the ability to make plays for others and kind of serve as this hub for Marquette. And if he can continue stretching his game out and being more consistent as a scorer, I think he could really shine and put himself in a great position going into the NBA. Kwame Evans is the pick for Portland at 46. Evans is a 6'10 wing / forward that'll be a freshman at Oregon this year. He's still a little raw for me to throw him into that 20s mix of wings. Maybe I changed my mind by the preseason board, but his defensive upside matched with some of the shot making that he's shown at that size is worth the selection here for the Blazers. The Kings take Dylan Jones out of Weber State. Jones made a lot of waves on both combines this spring and should be one of the biggest mid-major stars this year. He's a big body guard with great feel, measurables, and an all-around game that could get him drafted fairly high despite being an older player. Woogo Poplar is the pick for Minnesota at 48. While he had some draft attention last year, he's one of the upperclassmen I think have the best chance of vaulting themselves into serious draft contention this year, so he's got to get picked here somewhere. He's a big-time defender, made a real jump everywhere offensively as a sophomore, played a big part in their Final Four run, and definitely someone I think a lot of teams could use as a 6'5 guard, and as I'm doing this, he'll probably even be a little higher on the preseason big board. Atlanta takes a chance on the Illawarra Hawks' AJ Johnson at 49. Now, AJ may be the single hardest player for me to place in the class right now. He's got some tremendous flashes, but he also looked pretty beyond his depth in his first NBL action. I'm still a fan of the pieces of his game. I think he's got the talent to belong, but all of those opinions on him should be a lot clearer over the next several months. Reese Beekman goes to Philly. He's a dog of a defensive guard with a solid all-around game to complement. If he can fully assert himself offensively this year, I think he's highly touted, and Philly is a pretty great landing spot for his game in my opinion. DeRon Holmes goes to Boston at 51, and Holmes should further establish himself as a draftable big in his class as a dynamic play finisher and shot blocker with the potential to stretch the floor. JJ Starling goes to LA at 52. He's a lightning bolt of a combo guard headed to Syracuse after playing for Notre Dame his freshman year, and now he forms one of the better backcourts in college with Judah Mintz. I also think he has the game to go considerably higher than this, but with all the names here, this is just kind of where he lands at the moment. Ignite guard London Johnson goes to the Indiana Pacers. Another guy who I'm a little undecided on right now, which is fine, it's September. I think there's something there with him. He's looking much improved from a year ago, but I'm not 100% sure where his niche is just yet, but I think he's a draftable talent and we'll see where he goes. The Rockets take Kevin McCullough at 55. If McCullough can show any semblance of improvement as a shooter, he'll get drafted, even being an older guy. He's a big-time defender with good feel and a good motor. It's just about finding that offensive niche for him, and he'll probably do it in a winning fashion, and that's going to probably boost his stock even further. The Spurs take Trevin Brazil here. Now, coming off the torn ACL, I just want to kind of see him back out there. But best case, an athletic forward who may be able to stretch the floor and had some flashes of defensive versatility could make an impact in the league and go higher than this despite being somewhat of a tweener in some ways. Purdue's Zach Edey goes to the Wizards. They need any help they can get at the 5 spot, I think. And while I've got a lot of questions about Edey, I'd be surprised if the 7'4" big man and likely first team All-American isn't picked next year. Georgia Tech's Miles Kelly goes to the Hornets here. I definitely think he's in for another breakout season as a junior and will likely get himself into draft contention. Trenton Flowers is the pick for Indiana. Flowers took the trip down under to be a point guard in the NBL. That was quickly apparent as something that he is not, but the athleticism, sort of defensive versatility, and upside as a shooter do intrigue me. I am just a bit worried about the overall decision making, among a couple other things. And then Phoenix finishes off the draft taking Terrence Shannon Jr. with the last pick. Now here is a look back at the entirety of the 2 rounds. There are a ton of others that I just couldn't fit in here right now that I really like, and we'll talk about that more on the preseason board, which the boards are always way more productive at this point than the mocks are, but y'all kind of enjoy the team element of it, which I understand. But if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new around here, and leave a comment down below of who you want your favorite team to target in next year's draft based off of what you know so far, and also how you would approach things at the top of the draft as well. But that's all I really got for this one. I appreciate you guys who made it this far into the video, and as always, I'm Keandre. This is HoopIntellect. Until next time, I'm out.